The woolly mammoth of Wrangel Island. The Great Pyramid of Giza has already been standing for 1,000 years. Stonehenge is finished. The Bronze Age is in full swing. Somewhere on a frozen strip of land in the Arctic Ocean, a herd of woolly mammoths is still alive. Then, in what the geological record suggests was the span of a single human lifetime, they are gone. No warning, no gradual decline. Just silence where there had been something breathing. This is not ancient prehistory. This is 3,700 years ago. The mammoths that most people picture as contemporaries of cave painters and stone-tipped spears had in fact been gone from the Eurasian mainland for 6,000 years by the time this last population died. They had survived on Wrangel Island, a remote patch of Arctic tundra 140 kilometers off the Siberian coast, long enough to watch human civilization invent writing, mathematics, and bronze. And then, almost immediately after humans appear in the archaeological record of the surrounding region, they vanish. Radiocarbon dating of bones and tusks from Wrangel Island places the population's survival to approximately 1700 BCE, with some specimens potentially more recent. The island held somewhere between 500 and 1,000 individuals at its peak, which is small by continental standards, but stable by island megafauna standards. These were not the last desperate stragglers of a dying lineage. They were a functioning herd. And the evidence from inside their bones makes their extinction harder to explain, not easier. In 2017, Rebecca Rogers and Montgomery Slatkin at the University of California, Berkeley sequenced the genome of the last Wrangel mammoth and found something that should have been reassuring. The population had accumulated deleterious mutations, including one affecting neurological development. The standard narrative of slow genetic collapse seemed confirmed. But in 2023, a counterstudy led by Love Dahlin at the Center for Paleogenetics in Stockholm reanalyzed the data and reached a very different conclusion. Those mutations, Dahlin's team argued, were largely non-functional. The genome showed no classic signatures of inbreeding depression. The animal was not in freefall. The tusks tell the same uncomfortable story. Tusk growth rings in mammoths work like tree rings. Each year of life is recorded in the ivory. Analysis of Wrangel Island tusks from the final population shows no periods of nutritional stress in the years immediately preceding the extinction. These were not starving animals. Climate modeling of the island during the extinction window shows a period of relative stability, not the kind of abrupt freeze or ecological collapse that might explain a mass die-off in years or decades. And then there is the most striking silence of all. Wrangel Island has never yielded a confirmed human kill site. No projectile points embedded in mammoth bone. No butchering marks consistent with systematic hunting. No hearth ash dated to the extinction window and associated with mammoth remains. The humans who were reaching the wider Siberian Arctic at this time were sophisticated hunters. They left evidence everywhere else they went. On Wrangel Island, they left almost nothing. Paleontologists working within the mainstream framework argue that small populations are inherently vulnerable regardless of what the genome says. A single harsh winter, a disease outbreak, a temporary disruption to the water supply. In a herd of several hundred animals, any of these could cascade into extinction before the bones have time to register the stress. It is the bad luck hypothesis, and it is not unreasonable. But the bad luck hypothesis requires you to believe that a population which had already survived 6,000 years of island isolation, multiple climate fluctuations, and the entire collapse of its mainland relatives simply ran out of fortune at the precise historical moment that humans arrived in the region. Some researchers have begun asking whether even a handful of hunters, taking 1 or 2 animals per season, could have tipped a small population over the edge without leaving a dense archaeological record. Others raised the possibility of something the bones cannot capture at all: a pathogen, a reproductive disease, something invisible in the fossil record. We may never know. What we do know is that the last mammoth died in a world that already had cities, and we still cannot say why. From that frozen island, we crossed the Pacific to a sun-baked Australian lakebed full of bones. Bones that are equally healthy, equally silent, and equally unexplained. Diprotodon, picture a wombat. Now scale it up to the size of a rhinoceros. Give it 3 tons of bulk, a lumbering intelligence honed over 1.5 million years, and the ecological flexibility to track seasonal water sources across an entire continent. This animal has lived through ice ages, through periods far more climatically extreme than anything recorded in human history. It has outlasted catastrophes that reshaped the Australian landscape from top to bottom. And then, in a window the geological record can barely measure, it is gone. Every single one of them. And the crime scene is almost completely clean. Diprotodon optidum is the largest marsupial that has ever lived. Its shoulders stood approximately 1.8 meters tall. Its body stretched nearly 3 meters from nose to tail. First formally described by the anatomist Richard Owen in 1838, it became one of the most studied of Australia's lost megafauna, in part because one of its graveyards is extraordinary. At Lake Calabana in South Australia, the remains of at least 360 individual animals lie preserved in what was once a drying lake bed. They walked in looking for water and sank into the mud. Their final moments were captured in sediment. What those sediments have told us is deeply strange. A major study using optically stimulated luminescence dating, led by Gifford Miller and colleagues, placed the most recent confirmed Diprotodon remains at approximately 40,000 years ago. Within a few thousand years of the first confirmed human presence on the Australian continent. The timing is not subtle. It is, in fact, almost the first thing researchers notice. Analysis of Diprotodon. Molar teeth using oxygen isotope ratios reveals that these animals were sophisticated survivors. They tracked seasonal rainfall patterns with behavioral flexibility. They were not specialists locked into a single habitat. They moved. They adapted. Their teeth show no signs of nutritional stress in the periods approaching their extinction. By every biological marker available, Diprotodon was a healthy, functioning megafauna species right up until it wasn't. 2020 study by Julian Louise and colleagues modeled hunting pressure from early Australian human populations under deliberately conservative assumptions: small human groups, low hunting frequency. The model found that even minimal offtake, fewer than 2 Diprotodon killed per band per year, could theoretically have driven the species to extinction within approximately 700 years. 700 years is a geological instant, and it would not leave a dense kill site record. That last point is crucial. Confirmed kill sites, defined as Diprotodon bone with cut marks from stone tools, embedded projectile points, or direct association with dated hearth charcoal, are almost entirely absent from the Australian fossil record. Not rare, almost absent. There is a site called Cuddy Springs in New South Wales where megafauna bone and human artifacts appear in the same sediment layers, and it has been debated for decades. But the stratigraphic integrity of those layers is contested, with most researchers concluding the materials were mixed by later geological processes rather than deposited together. The mainstream position is a mosaic explanation. Hunting pressure, even if archaeologically invisible. Landscape burning by early Aboriginal settlers, which is documented in pollen records and restructured vegetation across the continent. and background climate aridification that was gradually reducing the productive grasslands Diprotodon depended on. No single cause synergy of pressures. But the synergy argument has a structural problem. If it was climate, Diprotodon had already survived 7 or 8 major ice age cycles far more severe than anything in the extinction window. If it was fire, the paleoecological record shows burning intensifying over tens of thousands of years, not spiking suddenly. And if it was hunting, we should be able to find the evidence more consistently than we do somewhere across a continent the size of Australia. Some researchers have begun raising a quieter and more unsettling possibility. Could a pathogen, something introduced by humans or by the animals that traveled with them, have moved through a naive megafauna population faster than any hunting could? A disease can leave no skeletal signature at all. It would explain the speed, the geographic spread, and the silence of the crime scene simultaneously. It remains a hypothesis without direct evidence. But then, so does everything else. From an Australian lakebed full of bones with no wounds, we cross the Pacific to the North American plains, where we find a predator whose own skeleton actively contradicts the story of its death, the short-faced bear. It is the fastest large land predator North America has ever produced. It stands 1.8 meters at the shoulder on all fours, which means at full height it looks you in the eye from a position of complete dominance. Its legs are built for pursuit, not ambush, longer relative to its body mass than any modern bear, designed for sustained speed across open ground. Biomechanical models suggest it could reach speeds of around 50 kilometers per hour in a sprint, fast enough to run down a horse. And its bones, examined by isotope chemists in the 1990s and 2000s, tell a story that the extinction textbooks have not fully absorbed. This animal was not starving. It was not losing ground. By every measurable biological indicator, Arctodus simus was at the top of its game. And then, 11,000 years ago, it was gone. The largest confirmed specimens of Arctodus simus weighed somewhere between 900 and 1,000 kilograms, making it the heaviest terrestrial mammalian predator in the history of North America. It ranged from Alaska to Mexico, from California's coastline to the eastern plains. 2 of the best-studied fossil deposits come from Natural Trap Cave in Wyoming, where radiocarbon dates cluster between 20,000 and 11,000 years ago, showing continuous, healthy population presence, and from the Rancho La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, which have yielded at least 30 individual Arctodus specimens. Those specimens are where the story gets uncomfortable. Paul Koch and colleagues at the University of California, Santa Cruz analyzed the stable carbon and nitrogen isotopes preserved in Arctodus bone collagen, the same method used to reconstruct ancient human diets. Nitrogen-15 values in the Arctodus specimens were consistent with a diet dominated by large herbivore meat, horses, camels, giant ground sloths, high-quality protein, abundant prey. The isotope values showed no decline approaching the extinction horizon. The last short-faced bears, by the chemistry of their own bones, were eating as well as their ancestors had for thousands of years before them. Not a single one of the Rancho La Brea specimens shows embedded projectile points or cut marks consistent with human predation. There are no confirmed Arctodus kill sites anywhere in the North American archaeological record, which is notable because confirmed kill sites for mammoths and mastodons do exist. The Clovis hunters who arrived in North America around 13,000 years ago left evidence of their work on other megafauna. On Arctodus, that evidence is essentially absent. Perhaps hunting a 1,000-kilogram bear capable of outrunning a horse was not a strategy early human groups pursued. That is a reasonable inference. but it still doesn't explain why the bear died. The mainstream explanation places Arctodus within the broader North American megafauna collapse. Roughly 35 of 45 genera of large mammals disappeared in a window of approximately 1,000 years, centered around 11,000 years ago. The argument for the short-faced bear specifically is indirect. As horses, camels, and ground sloths disappeared under Clovis hunting pressure and climate-driven habitat change, Arctodus lost its prey base. Even if the isotopes don't show starvation, the collapse of the food supply was too fast to register in the bone chemistry of the surviving individuals. But that argument requires the bear to have crashed from apparent health to total continental extinction without leaving a transitional record anywhere. Other large predators that face prey collapse show population declines that unfold over centuries and leave archaeological traces. Arctodus leaves nothing of the kind. It is there, apparently thriving, and then it is not there at all, across an entire continent, simultaneously. A minority of researchers have proposed something more dramatic. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, which remains actively contested within the scientific community, suggests that a cosmic impact or airburst event approximately 12,900 years ago may have triggered cascading ecological collapse across North America faster than normal ecological processes could account for. Proponents point to a layer of nanodiamonds, platinum, and magnetic spherules found across multiple North American sites at the Younger Dryas boundary. Critics argue the evidence is inconsistent and the interpretation overreaches the data. The debate is ongoing and unresolved. What is not contested is the shape of the mystery. A predator with no dietary stress, abundant prey, and no confirmed human kill sites vanished from an entire continent in what appears to be, geologically speaking, the blink of an eye. The bones said the bear was fine. The record says the bear is gone. Those two facts have never been fully reconciled. From a North American cave full of healthy bones that tell a story without an ending, we cross the ocean to a small Indonesian island, where the mystery isn't about an animal at all. It's about us. Homo floresiensis. In September of 2003, a team of archaeologists digging into the floor of a limestone cave on the island of Flores in Indonesia pulled out a skull. It was unmistakably human in structure. The orbital ridges, the basic cranium, the general architecture of a Homo sapiens relative. But it was the size of a grapefruit. The skeleton it belonged to stood approximately 1 meter tall, and buried around it were stone tools, small blades, points, and perforators that required planning, dexterity, and what we would recognize as deliberate craft. This was not a diseased modern human. This was something else. A different kind of person, sharing this planet with our own species for tens of thousands of years. And then it was gone, not in the deep past of prehistory, but at approximately the same moment that modern humans arrived in the wider region. The discovery was announced in Nature in October of 2004 by a team led by Mike Morwood of the University of New England and his Indonesian colleagues. The type specimen, designated LB1, was a female with a brain volume of approximately 380 to 417 cubic centimeters. Modern Homo sapiens average around 1,350 cubic centimeters. For context, a chimpanzee brain runs to about 400 cubic centimeters. Homo floresiensis had, in terms of raw volume, the cognitive hardware of a great ape. And yet the tools surrounding it were sophisticated. That combination broke every existing model of how brain size and tool-making capacity relate to each other. The debate that followed was extraordinary in scope and intensity. Pathological explanations were proposed one after another. Microcephaly, which causes abnormally small skulls. Laron syndrome, a growth hormone disorder. Hypothyroid cretinism, Down syndrome. Each was tested against the skeletal evidence by multiple research teams. Each failed on at least one anatomical criterion. A 2007 study by Matthew Tauchery and colleagues published in Science examined the wrist bones of LB1 and found them anatomically primitive, structurally similar to African apes and early hominins, in a way that no pathological condition affecting a modern human could produce. The wrist, in other words, wasn't the wrist of a sick person. It was the wrist of a different species. Stone tool analysis extended the picture further. A 2016 study led by Adam Brum and colleagues published in Nature pushed the tool use record on Flores back to approximately 1 million years ago, predating the Floresiensis specimens by hundreds of thousands of years and suggesting a long, independent evolutionary lineage on the island. The most probable ancestor is Homo erectus, a larger-brained hominin that reached Southeast Asia at least 1.5 million years ago and is thought to have been trapped on Flores when sea levels rose. Over hundreds of thousands of years of island isolation, the lineage shrank. A phenomenon called insular dwarfism that is well documented in other island fauna. Large animals get smaller when resources are limited and competition is absent. Radiocarbon and luminescence dating of the Liangbua cave deposits was substantially revised in a 2016 study by Thomas Sutikna and colleagues. Earlier dates had suggested Floresiensis might have survived until 12,000 years ago, potentially overlapping with modern humans for an extended period. The revised dates push the most recent confirmed specimens to approximately 50,000 years ago, which places the extinction uncomfortably close to the arrival of Homo sapiens in the broader Wallacean region, but removes the long overlap that had seemed suggestive of direct contact. The mainstream explanation for the extinction is the most uncomfortable possible one. Modern humans arrived, and Floresiensis did not survive the encounter. Whether through direct conflict, competition for resources, or habitat disruption from fire, the timing is the argument. No confirmed Homo sapiens fossil from Flores itself has been dated to that specific window. There is no clear archaeological evidence of contact. There is no transition period visible in the record. No Floresiensis site showing gradual decline. The population appears, and then the record simply ends. Some researchers have proposed that the extinction may have been volcanic rather than human. Flores is one of the most geologically active islands in the world, and a major eruption at around 50,000 years ago has been suggested as a possible cause of the deposit gap at Liangbua. Others argue that Floresiensis-like populations may have persisted in caves elsewhere on Flores or on neighboring islands, in places that have not yet been excavated. The island's interior remains largely unexplored archaeologically. The modern Flores oral tradition includes descriptions of small, cave-dwelling people called the Ebu Gogo, described as diminutive, murmuring, and capable of mimicking speech, with accounts that some community elders have placed within living or recent memory. Most researchers treat this as folklore. A few are not certain that's all it is. From an Indonesian cave that held a different kind of human, we climb into the mountain forests of New Zealand, where the greatest aerial predator this planet has ever produced met its end in a century so compressed it barely registers in the geological record. Haast's eagle. It weighs 15 kilograms. Its wingspan reaches 3 meters. It can fold those wings and drop through dense forest canopy in a controlled dive, and when it hits its talons, each one roughly 9 centimeters long and comparable in scale to a modern tiger's claws, drive through flesh and into bone with a force that modern biomechanical modeling struggles to replicate in any living raptor. For millions of years, nothing in New Zealand has been able to stop it. The entire archipelago is its hunting ground, and the prey it has evolved to kill is the largest bird this planet has ever produced. Then, in the 1300s, Polynesian canoes touched the shore. Within 100 years, the greatest aerial predator in Earth's history is gone. Haast's eagle, formerly named Hyraetus morae after its describer Julius von Haast in 1871, is one of the most extreme examples of evolutionary transformation in the vertebrate record. A 2005 genetic study by Michael Bunce and colleagues, published in PLOS Biology, revealed that its closest living relative is the little eagle of Australia, Hyraetus morphnoides, a bird weighing under 1 kilogram. The size difference between ancestor and descendant is roughly 15-fold. That transformation happened in isolation over the millions of years that Haast's eagle evolved on islands that had no land mammal predators, no competition from other large birds of prey and prey items of extraordinary size. Those prey items were the moa, 9 species of giant flightless bird, the largest of which, Dinornis robustus, stood over 3.5 meters tall with its neck extended and weighed up to 250 kilograms. Haast's eagle hunted animals more than 15 times its own body mass. The mechanics of this are staggering. A 2005 study by Paul Schofield and Ken Ashwell demonstrated that moa pelvic bones recovered from archaeological sites bear puncture wounds that precisely match Haast's eagle talon morphology. This is forensic evidence. The eagle did not merely coexist with moa, it hunted them with specific evolved precision. The eagle's short, broad wings are an adaptation to forest pursuit, the opposite of the long, narrow wings of an open-country raptor. Its leg musculature was hypertrophied to a degree unlike any living accipiter. Its entire body plan was a solution to a specific ecological problem that had existed on these islands for millions of years, refined across countless generations until it was essentially perfect. And the moment the thing it was built to hunt began to disappear, the eagle had nowhere to go. Maori settlers, the descendants of Polynesian navigators who reached New Zealand around 1280 to 1300 CE, are documented in the archaeological record as intensive moa hunters. Midden sites across both islands contain moa bone in extraordinary quantities. Modeling studies have suggested that all 9 moa species were driven to extinction within approximately 100 to 200 years of sustained hunting pressure. The eagle, with no alternative prey capable of sustaining a 15-kilogram raptor in a now heavily hunted landscape, followed its food source into oblivion. This is the mainstream explanation, and the logic is sound. But the speed is the part that demands a second look. 100 years. For a bird with an estimated generation time of 15 to 20 years, that is only 5 or 6 breeding generations from a presumably healthy population to 0. There are no Haast's eagle bones in Maori middens, in quantities suggesting the bird itself was a significant hunting target. The eagle does not appear to have been systematically killed. It appears to have simply run out of world. Maori oral tradition preserves accounts of a giant bird called the poua, or hokioi, a vast crested creature said to have been capable of carrying off people. Some ethnographers have argued these traditions are genuine memory of Haast's eagle, preserved in story, because the bird was not merely prey, but a genuine threat. If that reading is correct, the eagle's fearlessness toward humans, a species it had never encountered before in its evolutionary history, may have made it a direct target for elimination, adding deliberate killing to the indirect pressure of prey collapse. The archaeology cannot confirm this, but the oral record does not let it go. From a bird built for a world that lasted millions of years and gone within a century, we moved to the forests of post-glacial Europe, where a predator that survived everything the Ice Age threw at it died in the warmest, most ecologically abundant period it had ever known. The cave lion. For 300,000 years, it survived everything. Ice ages where temperatures dropped so severely that glaciers covered Scotland, Denmark, and the northern half of Britain. Glacial maximums where prey migrated south or died entirely. It did not follow them into extinction. It adapted, it persisted, and it came out the other side. It is the largest lion species that has ever lived, larger than any modern African lion, and it is perfectly adapted to the cold of Ice Age Europe and Asia, ranging from the British Isles all the way to the Yukon in North America. And then, approximately 13,000 years ago, as the ice retreats and the climate stabilizes and the grasslands bloom across a warming continent, the cave lion simply stops existing. It does not die in the cold. It dies in the warmth. Panthera spelaea is estimated to have been 5 to 10% larger than the modern African lion based on skeletal measurements recovered from cave deposits across Europe and Siberia. It appears in the fossil record approximately 300,000 years ago and maintained a healthy, geographically distributed presence through some of the most climatically extreme periods in the last million years. It survived the last glacial maximum, the coldest phase, centered around 21,000 years ago, without any apparent population bottleneck visible in the genetic record. That genetic record has become significantly richer since 2015, when local hunters in Siberia recovered an extraordinarily preserved cave lion cub from the permafrost. The cub, named Uyan, retained its fur, its whiskers, and much of its internal tissue. A second cub, Sparta, was recovered in 2018 and dated by researchers including Dave Stanton and Love Deline to approximately 28,000 years ago. These specimens showed animals in normal physical condition, no signs of disease, no developmental abnormalities. A 2021 genomic analysis using ancient DNA from multiple cave lion bones confirmed that the population had maintained healthy genetic diversity throughout the last glacial maximum. The extinction cannot be explained by genetic collapse. The data rules it out. Climate change is the standard fallback explanation for Ice Age megafauna extinction, but the cave lion's timing makes this difficult to sustain. Its disappearance falls in the Allerud interstadial, a notably warm and productive phase in European post-glacial history. The open-steppe grassland habitat that cave lions preferred was indeed giving way to denser forest as temperatures rose, which would have affected pursuit hunting. But cave lions had survived previous interglacial warming periods and the associated forest expansions that came with them. This was not the first time the ecology of Europe had restructured around them. They had navigated it before. The dietary isotope data adds another layer of difficulty. Analysis of cave lion bone collagen shows a broad dietary range: horse, reindeer, cave bear, woolly rhinoceros, suggesting opportunistic hunting across multiple prey types. This is not the profile of a specialist that would collapse when a single prey species disappeared. Arctidus, the short-faced bear, showed the same pattern. Both had flexible diets. Both vanished anyway. What the cave lion does have, which most other extinct megafauna do not, is an extraordinary artistic record. At Chauvet Cave in southern France, the oldest known decorated cave, with paintings dated to approximately 36,000 years ago, cave lions are the single most frequently depicted animal. They are shown hunting horses, coordinating in groups, watching prey from elevated positions. These are not generic animal portraits. They suggest sustained, close observation of lion behavior over long periods. They suggest that the humans who painted them lived alongside cave lions and paid them extraordinary attention. Some researchers have proposed that this attention was not purely admiring. If cave lions were being killed, not for food but for ritual purposes, for pelts, or simply because a population of humans expanding across a landscape had reasons to eliminate a large apex predator. Even low-intensity targeted hunting of top predators can cascade toward extinction with minimal archaeological signature. Killing one breeding female per year in a population of hundreds is barely detectable in the bone record. Over decades, it can be fatal. We do not know if this happened. We only know that humans were there, that they were watching, and that the lion is gone. From the post-glacial forests of Europe, we cross the Atlantic to South America, where a creature that wore armor for 50 million years disappeared from two continents simultaneously, without leaving a single confirmed kill site on either one. Glyptodon picture a Volkswagen Beetle. Cover it in hexagonal bone plates, each one fused into a dome so structurally sophisticated that modern materials scientists have studied it as a model for impact-resistant engineering. Give it a tail like a medieval flail. In some species, a bony club bearing a ring of conical spikes capable of shattering the shell of a rival. Put it on legs like pillars. This animal has been walking the earth in various forms for over 35 million years. Its armor is the most sophisticated passive defense system any terrestrial mammal has ever evolved. Nothing in the Pleistocene ecosystem has the bite force to break through it. And 10,000 years ago, it vanishes from two separate continents at almost exactly the same moment, without leaving behind a single confirmed kill site on either one. Glyptodon is a member of the family Glyptodontidae, a lineage whose origins trace back to the Eocene epoch. The largest species weighed somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 kilograms and produced a shell dome reaching up to 1.5 meters in height. Individual osteoderms, the hexagonal plates that form the shell, range from 2.5 to over 5 centimeters in thickness, arranged in a layered cortical-cancellous bone structure that modern biomechanical testing confirms provides exceptional resistance to compression and puncture. Charles Darwin collected fragments of Glyptodont shell during the Beagle voyage in 1833 from Argentine coastal deposits, one of the first scientific records of the animal in the Western literature. The timeline of human coexistence with Glyptodon in South America is substantial. The first confirmed human presence on the continent is documented at the Monteverde site in Chile, where evidence of habitation has been dated to approximately 14,500 years ago. Glyptodon's extinction is placed at approximately 10,000 years ago. That is at minimum 4,000 years of overlap. 4,000 years is long enough to leave an archaeological record. It has not in any volume that satisfies the standards of the field. There are persistent reports in the popular science literature that early South American humans used Glyptodont shell domes as shelters or roofing material, a striking image that has been widely repeated. The archaeological evidence for this claim is thin, and the specific site contexts are disputed. What is not disputed is that the animal existed alongside humans for a substantial period and that confirmed kill evidence is effectively absent. Glyptodon crossed into North America approximately 3 million years ago during the Great American Biotic Interchange, when the formation of the Central American land bridge connected the two continents for the first time. It successfully colonized new territory, survived the passage, and established populations across what is now Florida, Texas, and Central America. These North American populations disappeared on the same geological timeline as the South American ones. Both continents simultaneously within the broader window of the late Pleistocene megafauna extinction. The mainstream explanation invokes the overkill hypothesis. Glyptodon was slow reproducing, estimated one offspring per year with a multi-year maturation period, and its armor, which protected it from every predator in its evolutionary history, offered no useful defense against a human hunter approaching from behind with a thrusting spear aimed at the neck, the legs, or the unprotected belly. Naive to human predators, easy to approach, slow to reproduce, the model says it was vulnerable regardless of the shell. But the model struggles with the simultaneity. The populations of early humans in North and South America were not in communication across thousands of kilometers of continent. They were not coordinating. And yet the extinction appears to have happened on both land masses within the same narrow geological window, not centuries apart, not in sequence following a wave of human migration, but together. If hunting drove both extinctions independently, the timing alignment requires a coincidence that some researchers find uncomfortable. A competing explanation points to the Younger Dryas climatic event, a sudden return to near-glacial conditions approximately 12,900 years ago, as having disrupted South American grassland ecosystems rapidly enough to remove the vegetation Glyptodon depended on across its range. This would explain the continental simultaneity without requiring coordinated human action. The Younger Dryas was a global event, but it is worth noting that Glyptodon had survived previous Pleistocene cold events without going extinct. Whatever killed it this time was different. We do not know what that was. From South America, where armor lasted 50 million years and then stopped, we crossed the ocean to New Zealand, where 9 species of the tallest birds this planet ever produced left the most complete extinction record in the fossil archive. And it still raises questions that the record alone cannot close. The Moa 9 species, the smallest roughly the size of a large turkey. The largest, Dinornis robustus, standing over 3.5 meters tall with its neck extended, making it the tallest bird this planet has ever produced. They have been walking the islands of New Zealand for 60 million years. In all that time, they have never encountered a predator that walks on 2 legs and carries a spear. They have no flight response to humans. They have no evolutionary memory of anything that hunts the way we do. And when we arrive, every single species, all 9 of them, is gone within a window that some researchers compress to as little as 100 years. But the bones carry a detail that the hunting alone explanation has never fully absorbed. The Moa, order Dinornithiformes, represent one of the most remarkable avian radiations in natural history. 9 confirmed species spread across both the North and South Islands, occupying ecological niches from dense coastal forest to open montane grassland. Radiocarbon dating of Moa bones from archaeological middens and natural deposits compiled in a major 2014 meta-analysis places the youngest confirmed Moa remains at approximately 1445 CE. Maori ancestors, Polynesian navigators, are now believed to have arrived in New Zealand around 1280 to 1300 CE. The arithmetic is stark. The gap between arrival and extinction is 150 to 200 years. The archaeological record of Maori moa hunting is extensive. Midden sites across both islands contain moa bone in quantities that suggest hunting at industrial scale. Conservative modeling studies, including a 2014 analysis by Fordham and colleagues, demonstrated that even under low estimates of human population density and hunting frequency, the hunting pressure alone was sufficient to drive moa to extinction within 160 years. This is the mainstream explanation, and it has real evidentiary support. The moa's complete lack of evolutionary experience with ground predators made it, in all likelihood, absurdly easy to kill, No fear response, no flight instinct, no behavioral adaptation to threat. Walk up to it and use a spear. The mystery does not live in the fact of the extinction. It lives in what the bones of the final animals show. Stable isotope analysis of MOA specimens from the terminal population period, conducted at the University of Otago, shows nitrogen-15 values consistent with normally feeding, nutritionally adequate adults. The last moai were not starving. Their bone density shows no signs of reduced breeding success. They were not being squeezed into marginal habitat and slowly weakening. By every biological marker available in the chemistry of their own skeletons, the animals that represent the end of a 60 million year lineage were, right up to that end, healthy. Ancient DNA analysis, conducted by Michael Bunce's group and Morton Allentoft's group working separately on museum specimens, shows stable genetic diversity in the pre-extinction MOA populations. No genetic bottleneck, no inbreeding signal. The population structure looks like a species that should have had decades or centuries of life ahead of it. And then the fossil record simply stops. Some researchers argue that the healthy terminal isotopes are not actually a mystery. They are exactly what you would expect from a hunting-driven extinction. If humans kill a population faster than it can register dietary stress, the last individuals die healthy. The collapse is from the outside, not from within. That argument is coherent. It may even be correct. But others have proposed that the extinction was not purely about hunting. Paleoecological evidence in pollen records shows that Maori settlers burned substantial areas of New Zealand forest, converting it to grassland, a dramatic and rapid restructuring of habitat. If that burning was happening simultaneously with hunting pressure, the Moa were being hit from two directions at once. And some researchers have raised the possibility that in the most remote areas of Fiordland and the Southern Alps, certain Moa populations may have persisted beyond the 1445 date. That the compression of the extinction into 100 years is partly a function of where the radiocarbon samples were collected and where they weren't. We may be looking at the best documented megafauna extinction in the fossil record and still not seeing it clearly. From the glacial fjords of New Zealand, we cross to the open ocean, where the largest predatory fish in Earth's history vanished faster than any comparable apex predator in the record, according to a study that was published less than 3 years ago and that science has not yet fully processed. Megalodon. It is 18 meters long. Its jaws span 3 meters, a single tooth, and it replaces them continuously, producing tens of thousands over a lifetime, measures up to 18.5 centimeters in diagonal length. For 20 million years, it has been the unchallenged apex predator of every ocean on Earth. Not regionally dominant, globally dominant. Its teeth turn up in fossil beds on every continent, in every ocean basin, across geological formations spanning tens of millions of years. And then, approximately 3.6 million years ago, it disappears. Not slowly, not region by region, in the way that a struggling apex predator typically retreats as conditions worsen. According to a 2023 study, it went faster than any comparable predator in the history of vertebrate life on this planet, and the data from inside its teeth says it was eating well right up to the end. Autodus megalodon first appears in the fossil record approximately 23 million years ago in the early Miocene. Body length estimates derived from scaling relationships between tooth size and total body length, developed by Kenshu Shimada at DePaul University, placed the largest individuals at approximately 15 to 20 meters, with a bite force modeled in a 2008 study by Stephen Rowe and colleagues at between approximately 108,000 and 182,000 newtons. For comparison, a great white shark generates roughly 18,000 newtons. Megalodon was not simply a larger version of the sharks we know today. It was in a different category of biological engineering entirely. In 2022, Jeremy McCormick and colleagues published a stable isotope study of megalodon tooth enamel in Nature Communications. Using zinc isotope ratios, a method that tracks trophic position with greater precision than earlier techniques, they found that megalodon occupied the highest trophic level of any marine animal in its era. It was eating above the other large sharks. It was eating above everything. And the isotope values from teeth close to the extinction horizon showed no decline in dietary quality. The last megalodons, by the chemistry of their own dental enamel, were still eating apex-level prey. The 2023 study by Catalina Pimiento and colleagues did something that had not been done before in megalodon research. It applied rigorous occurrence modeling to the global fossil record, treating tooth occurrences across time and geography as a statistical population dataset. What it found was that megalodon's disappearance was not a long decline with a tail. It was an abrupt termination. The rate of disappearance from the fossil record was faster than any comparable apex predator extinction that has been documented. This is not a species that faded. It is a species that stopped. The conventional explanation combines two factors. First, the closure of the Central American Seaway approximately 3.5 to 3.6 million years ago, which restructured ocean circulation patterns and changed the thermal gradients that governed whale migration routes. Second, competition from evolving great white sharks and orcas for the same large whale prey base, compressing megalodon's access to food from multiple directions simultaneously. The argument is that an animal of megalodon size required extraordinary caloric input, estimated in the tens of thousands of calories per day, and that as prey became less predictable, the metabolic math eventually became impossible. But the 2023 study undermined the competition argument at its foundation. If great white sharks drove megalodon to extinction through competitive pressure, they should have been expanding before the extinction, filling the niche as megalodon contracted. Instead, Pimiento and colleagues found that great white shark populations expanded after megalodon's disappearance, not before. The competitor arrived into a vacancy, not a contest. Some researchers have begun asking whether a discrete, non-ecological event might explain a collapse this sudden and this global. There is an intriguing data point. The Pliocene epoch, at approximately 2.6 to 3 million years ago, coincides with a nearby supernova event that has been detected in seabed iron-60 isotope deposits. A supernova at close enough range could have significantly elevated cosmic ray flux reaching Earth's surface and oceans, potentially disrupting the marine food web in ways that preferentially affected surface-hunting apex predators. This hypothesis is speculative, and its proponents are few. But it exists in the scientific literature, and it exists because the standard explanations have left a gap that the data has not yet filled. From an ocean predator whose bones said it was healthy right up until it wasn't, we come to the one extinction on this list that was photographed, filmed, and witnessed in living memory, and that we still cannot fully explain. The thylacine. His name is Benjamin. He paces a concrete enclosure at Hobart Zoo in September of 1936. He is the last of his kind, the last confirmed living representative of a lineage that has existed on this earth for 23 million years, that once ranged across the entire Australian continent and into New Guinea, that survived the arrival of Aboriginal Australians and thousands of years of a changing landscape. He is in a zoo because European settlers decided he was killing sheep and put a government bounty on his head. And on the night of September 7th, 1936, he is left outside with his enclosure locked. The temperature drops, he dies of exposure, and in the moment he stops breathing, something that has been alive since the Oligocene is gone. Except the sightings have not stopped. And the genetics, it turns out, are stranger than anyone expected. The thylacine, Thylacinus cynocephalus, was formally described by Etienne Geoffroy Saint-Hilaire in 1824, though Aboriginal rock art from the Kimberley region of Western Australia depicts it in images estimated to be between 3,500 and 4,000 years old, marking with striking precision the end of its mainland Australian presence. The mainland extinction is its own unsolved problem. It predates European arrival by approximately 2,000 years, placing it squarely in a window usually attributed to competition from the dingo, which reached Australia from Southeast Asia roughly 3,500 years ago. But the timing does not align cleanly. In some regional records, the mainland thylacine disappearance predates robust dingo presence by centuries. The standard explanation is contested in ways that the popular science literature rarely acknowledges. In Tasmania, the thylacine survived into recorded history. European settlers began reporting livestock losses attributed to thylacines within decades of colonization, and in 1888 the Tasmanian government introduced a bounty scheme. Over the following 21 years, at least 2,184 bounty claims were paid. The actual total kill is unknown. Bounties incentivize collection, not accurate record-keeping. Estimates of the pre-bounty Tasmanian population range widely, with most researchers placing it between 2,000 and 5,000 individuals. By the time the bounty was officially ended in 1909, the population had collapsed. The last confirmed wild individual was shot in 1930. 7 years later, Benjamin died in his concrete enclosure, and the species was declared extinct. What makes the thylacine's extinction scientifically strange, not emotionally strange, which it clearly also is the genomic evidence that emerged from Andrew Pask's laboratory at the University of Melbourne. Working with 13 museum specimens, Pask's team produced a near-complete reference genome of the thylacine. What they found contradicts the intuitive expectation of a species in terminal decline. Genetic diversity was low, but not critically so. Not at the level associated with populations on the verge of genomic collapse. An analysis of the genome showed signs of active adaptive evolution in the period leading up to extinction, not the signature of a lineage shutting down. The animal was changing, it was responding, it was, in the biological sense, trying. How does a species that is genetically adapting, functionally evolving, and not yet at the threshold of inbreeding depression get erased so completely in a single human generation? That question does not have an answer in the current literature. Since Benjamin's death in 1936, the Australian government has received over 3,800 reported thylacine sightings from Tasmania and mainland Australia. Most wildlife biologists explain these as misidentifications of known species, and in most cases, that is probably correct. A handful of sightings, including thermal camera footage submitted in 2016 and 2021, have not been categorically identified or dismissed by wildlife authorities. Andrew Pask himself has stated publicly that if any thylacine survived, Tasmania's largely unexplored southwestern wilderness is large enough and remote enough to conceal it. He has also stated that he does not believe it did. Colossal Biosciences, in partnership with Pask's laboratory, announced a de-extinction project in 2022 using CRISPR gene editing to reconstruct thylacine genetic sequences in a fat-tailed Dunnart surrogate, a related marsupial that will serve as the developmental template. The project is ongoing. The de-extinction effort raises a question that may be more important than the technical one. If we bring it back, what exactly are we returning? The genome is a reconstruction assembled from degraded museum specimens. The behavior, the social structure, the ecological knowledge that a thylacine mother would have passed to her young, none of that is stored in DNA. We would be creating an animal that looks like a thylacine that has thylacine genes in a world that no longer contains the ecosystem the thylacine inhabited. The island has changed. The prey has changed. We have changed, and we still do not fully understand why the animal died in the first place. 10 species, 10 silences where the science runs out. A mammoth that died in the age of the pyramids with a genome that showed no signs of collapse. A 3-ton marsupial that left no crime scene across an entire continent. A bear whose own bones contradict every reason offered for its death. A different kind of human, small-brained and tool-using, gone at the precise moment we arrived nearby. An eagle built over millions of years for a world that was dismantled in a century. A lion that survived the ice age and died in the warm. An armored giant that vanished from 2 continents simultaneously without a kill site on either. 9 species of the tallest birds ever to walk the earth. Gone while their bones still showed perfect health. The largest predator the oceans have ever produced, disappearing faster than any comparable animal in the record, well-fed right to the end. And a creature filmed and photographed and bounty hunted into extinction, whose genome still doesn't explain why it died. Science has real partial answers for all of these. The overkill hypothesis has genuine archaeological support in New Zealand. Climate restructuring played a real role in post-glacial Europe. Small populations are genuinely vulnerable to stochastic collapse. These explanations are not fabrications, and the researchers who developed them are working seriously from the available evidence. No credible scientist is proposing a single hidden cause that explains every extinction on this list. But here's what the data actually shows, if you read it without the framework imposed in advance. In case after case, the animal was healthy. In case after case, the collapse was sudden by geological standards. In case after case, the standard explanation fits the rough outline of what happened and stumbles on the specific details, the isotopes, the genetics, the missing kill sites, the impossible timing. The fossil record is not a complete archive, it is a thin and biased sample of an almost unimaginably complex biological reality. Every species on this list left enough evidence to confirm it existed, and barely enough to explain why it doesn't. That gap is not a failure of science. It is the honest shape of what we do not yet know. What connects these 10 cases is not a conspiracy. It is a pattern. And the pattern is this. Extinction, when it comes to dominant, healthy, long-established species, often arrives faster than the evidence can capture. The bones say the animal was fine. The record says the animal is gone. Those two facts are in tension across 10 different species on 6 different continents across 3 million years of Earth history. That tension is not resolved by the textbook explanation. It is the question the textbook has not yet answered. You watched all 10 of these because you read data the way it deserves to be read. With the specific numbers, the named researchers, the contradictions intact. Most people accept the label on the museum case and move on. You noticed where the explanation stops fitting. This channel exists for the people who notice that. Hit subscribe and stay in the archive. Then go to the comments and do this. Pick the one extinction from this list where you think the standard explanation fails most completely. Name it. Make your case. The most compelling argument gets pinned. Every species on this list was, at some point, the dominant form of life in its world. Not marginal, not struggling, thriving, adapting, building toward something. The mammoth in its Arctic stronghold. the cave lion ruling landscapes from Britain to the Yukon. The Thylacine still evolving right up to the moment it wasn't. What the fossil record teaches us, if we are willing to read it honestly, is that dominance is not permanence. Every apex predator that has ever lived eventually finds the edge of the world it was built for. We study these extinctions because they are extraordinary. We should study them because they are a pattern. And patterns, once you can see them, have a way of including you. Subscribe. The archive goes deeper.